first of all, thanks for having me on, Andrew, and hello to Stephen Murray out there who's connected us, a long friend from the US as well. How would I assess it? Best experience of my life, to be honest. Started out in Dublin with 𝑺𝒂𝒕𝒖𝒓𝒅𝒂𝒚 boys, one of the biggest kind of soccer institutions in Ireland, in Dublin. Never really made the grade, so I was looking at different options, and it literally popped up last minute in senior year of high school, and sixth year in secondary school. Been over here too long. And knew nothing about it, but the kind of plan was to go get an education. Thankfully, my parents kind of pushed that on me, of like, a lot of lads were coming back from England injured and had left school, so it was like, go get your education and you can always come back. You'll be 22, you'll be in a professional environment and you can push on. But no, it's been an amazing journey, and one I've got zero regrets about. So. Homesickness. Never been away from home before. Young, 18, leaving everything I knew, friends, family. We've got a close-knit family that we did everything together. But I was just determined just to get better, knowing that I was the highest level I was playing at the time was in the DDSL Dublin teams, which was pretty good. But there's always that next step of lads that were playing in the Irish, in the Irish setup and going to England. And I just, again, from my parents supportive, they never, my dad was always a good player in that, and I was around. My uncle is highly involved in St. Kevin's boys, and I think it was just the unknowns, because my mum and dad had no clue. When we thought of America, we thought of Disneyland in New York, and that was about it. Didn't even know soccer was a thing, really. But it was kind of, my mum and dad always gave me this, not unrealistic confidence, but a confidence just to, nothing really in soccer, just as a person of like, and I see it with my niece now, my parents talking to her, is you can do anything you put your mind to. And I know that's cliche, but you have to work for it. And I had this, I guess, self-belief in that I can do anything and I'll find a way through it. And, ultimately going out there was to get the education and come back and play. That was always the kind of goal, and I know we'll get into that a little bit as well. But it was just leaving everything that you just knew as a young Irish lad, just a complete world of unknowns. And I didn't have anyone really to speak to and ask questions about, Yeah, definitely. I mean, the work you guys are doing, the work Stephen's done, I know in the last few years in Ireland has been exceptional. And I think to be able to lay out the pathway, like I keep saying, I want to help people back home to be more educated and knowledgeable, that even if playing is not something you do, like I'm living a life in football right now that, I dreamt about. My day to day is all about soccer. So I think being able to lay out, the playing in terms of going from college into USL, into MLS, whatever it might be, connections all over the US, into South America, into Europe, like the network just doesn't stop once you kind of open up those doors, But yeah, I think it's definitely, like yourselves, you guys, like things like this, it allows people to see you can stay in the game in so many different ways and have a positive impact on kids. And obviously within the pro game, if you're that lucky to get involved in it. Great question. I always tell this story. I was in 𝒂𝒕𝒖𝒓𝒅𝒂𝒚, which is now unfortunately gone, but it was like a 10-month course to prepare you for the US SAT exams. And we obviously played soccer and we did our coaching badges and things like that. But Barry Farrell, who's now the head coach of William Carey, he was there. I think he was a junior at the time. They had just gone to the semi-finals and nationals, and it came down to two. Obviously financials is a big part of it, right? My mum and dad didn't have the money, so I had to look at financials as being a big part of my decision. So it came down to two. It was William Carey and Hofstra in New York. And the last two phone calls, after obviously doing all our homework, all the conversations, was the New York coach just talked about Manhattan and New York as a city and as the social side, probably thinking, Irish guys love to drink and party, but I didn't drink at 18. I was heavily into my football. That's all I cared about. So when the opposite coach talked about the actual soccer piece, going to nationals, you might not start as a freshman. There's less distractions in Mississippi of all places. That appealed to me more because my goal, like I said earlier, was I was going to America to kind of sharpen my tools and become better, and then come back and play. So that was the ultimate decision. And then I think the last kind of big decision was it was full of Europeans. There was a few Irish, Scottish, a couple of Europeans like Spanish and that, but in the New York one, it was just all Italians. And I mean, I hadn't even met an Italian person in my life, right? So to have Barry there as someone from Dublin and spoke to on the phone, you just felt a little bit more comfortable, like with the homesickness, which so many lads came over, even from Ireland and England, and they were gone after a season because they just couldn't hack the homesickness and just being away from family and things like that. So yeah, it worked out. It was the best decision I made because we ended up bringing in more Irish, so we had a good crew down there that looked out for each other. Yeah, really good point, because the club I'm in now, we're dealing with American kids going on scholarships, and they all think it's D1. The first thing I say is, are you going to play? You do not want to go to a college where you're going to sit the bench. Like I played with players. I was very lucky. I came in, I was probably the most used freshman out of any freshman, and then I pretty much played majority of my rest of the 3 years, captain my senior year. But there was kids on our team, local boys that were Mississippi high-profile high school players, barely got on the field in 4 years, and it's like, that's not the experience you want. But anyway, for me personally, but I'm like, you want to go play, you want to get better, you want to improve. But if you're just training and you're never playing in those games, the experience can be very, very different. So, and there's so many different programs out there. Like NAIA, we used to beat some D1 schools. Some of them used to beat us. You play all different levels, but we had a really strong NAIA team, and there's many of them out there. But yeah, D1, get that out of your head, find the right fit. Like for another piece for my decision was, I didn't hate school. I wasn't great in school, but I was okay. I did the work, but in terms of exams, I wouldn't have been the best. And someone had said to me that had, actually, I think it was Barry said at the time on the phone, was at William Carey was smaller classes, 20 to 30 students. Or you can go to like Memphis, which some of the lads went, and you might have 1,000 students. So we looked at that as, or Barry and the coach kind of talked to us about, you can have a personal relationship nearly with the teacher. They can help you. You don't get that at big schools. So that was something that appealed to me as well. And again, it worked out really well. So. Yeah, and again, it was an unknown, really had no clue. And you're thrown in the deep end to be like, right, training is at this time of the day. You need to do your classes at this time. So your schedule, I mean, you had to become basically very mature very quick. You had to grow up fast, right? Because you got to manage yourself in everything that you do, from obviously getting on the field, off the field, in your recovery, your diet, your nutrition, the gym, your classes, your studies. And then if some of us would have work, study, and luckily I was able to coach to make and referee and make extra money to live on. So it was just the, I guess, uniqueness of setting your, like, basically scheduling your life, right? Before that, my mum and dad was like, right, be up at this time, we're leaving at this time, the game, it was very easy. And I always hear those stories, and I always remember Rio Ferdinand talking about it, like when you're in the pro game, you're just told where to be and when to be there. And when you're there, you're just so focused, you don't think about anything else. So the opposite, obviously being a student athlete, is you've got to think of everything. Now you have support, you have human resources, you have your coach, you have teammates, but ultimately you're on your own to make those decisions. And luckily I've made some good ones along the way. When you graduate, you still want to play, right? And I had a bit of disappointment where I went to a combine with USL in Atlanta. I was chosen out of a top 10 out of 250. They wanted to sign me, but visa restrictions were involved. And then they sent me to Wilmington in North Carolina, which was Division 2. Same thing there, visa restrictions. So then I was just at a loss. And this is actually where I met Stephen Murray. Someone just said, I know a guy in Chicago, connected me. He's coaching, got involved in coaching for 2 years with him. But I still wanted to play. I still had, like, I was told I was good enough. I knew I was good enough, but the visa was killing me. So that's when I just, my sister had our little niece, and I made a decision to literally up and leave America forever. And I moved home to Dublin, swiftly moved into England as quick as I could, into Chester. One of my best mates lives there, and then ended up in North London. Played non-league, started working my way up there, was doing really well. And then got a little bit of a niggling injury at 26, at 25. And the doctor at the club was like, look, the club wants to get you back out as soon as you can. And you take an injection, the usual, right? But he said, Nick, like, what's the end goal here? Like, are you looking to be a pro? And like, not really. No, I'm just playing as long as I can play. So he said, well, don't do it. You'll regret it. So luckily, at the time, I was with a girl from America, and we up and when I went back and we got married, and literally interviewed as a coach for this club, became the director overnight, and the rebrand began. Andrew, yes is the question. I actually can, because I've visualized all this. I've manifested everything I've done. I've talked big from day one, especially, my mum and dad. I wouldn't be telling everybody, right, the big dreams. But honestly, when I came in day one into the city, I said to mum and dad, I'm going to change the face of soccer in this city, which I've done. The standards are much higher throughout all the clubs, which means the experience, the culture, everything now is much better. And we always look at ourselves competing with the suburbs, because there's some massive clubs out there that have been around 50, 60 years, right? So I did imagine it. It's a lot of it's happened quicker than I imagined, which is unbelievable. We're about to roll out our first USL men's team, which was number one goal in terms of the elite piece down the road. But again, luckily, whatever my knowledge I picked up over the years was, I've got to build a solid foundation within just as recreational grassroots soccer, right? That's number one. I had opportunities to jump ahead of the curve, and I didn't believe in it, because, one of the things I always reflect on is, like, with lads when they talk, or girls when they talk about their badges and, going to get their UEFA B and all that, sometimes there's too much emphasis on the label of it. For me, I could have jumped 2 tiers because I played a certain level, and I refused to, because I wanted to learn the right way. I wanted to, equip myself for the future. And that's what people, I think, sometimes miss. So yeah, with the Bayern Munich piece, it was actually an Irishman that reached out. He was involved in the partnership, and he said he actually called me based off seeing St. Kevin's boys. And I keep saying it, I'm giving them loads of plugs here. You're welcome, Pat Daly, and who's my uncle, is in there, by the way. But he saw that, and anyone from St. Kevin's typically comes from a solid integrity background, and that's where that phone call came from. And yeah, we had it for 4 years. We're actually moving on now. So there was always a middleman between that partnership, which wasn't a problem, but it just, for me, I wanted a direct line to an academy. So we're about to announce in the next couple of weeks that we're going with UK Category 1 Academy, Wolverhampton Wanderers. So upwards and onwards and upwards. A lot of exciting things. We've got everything from recreational to grassroots to high school to under 23 to reserves and to men's and women's kind of pre-professional. We're not allowed to call them semi-pro, but they're pre-professional teams, which I head coach both of them. So yes, nearly 10 years in, and I imagine some of it, but not all of it. But it's just absolutely been incredible journey. There's an amazing lifestyle over here within the sport, whether it's soccer or not. Like soccer could be your first love, and like one of my buddies he's from Ringsend, loves soccer. He ended up working at the Dallas Zoo because he loves reptiles. But I think just ultimately is like, there's so much potential of whatever path you want to take. So I said earlier, like, I started out was, I'm going to go over there, get an education, work within a pro environment, meaning student athlete, and then come back and go from there. I did that. I tried it, probably a little bit too late, but someone could do it sooner than I did. Or you stay. There's pro leagues here, but in terms of, what I always think about coming home, people always ask me, would you come home? And honestly, I would if I could do what I do and earn the money I earn and the lifestyle that I live back home, which I know is not possible. but I'd love to be able to help Irish kids as well as, you know, what I'm doing here. But it's just an unbelievable, you know, obviously the journey's been unbelievable, but the experience of living in another country, obviously it comes with its homesickness, it's missing family, missing friends. But when you're doing what you love, like I do, you know, running a soccer club, I mean, for me, it just can't get any better. I'm living the dream.